Hey, you're listening to the Talk 20s podcast. If you want to join in on the community discussion, head over to our YouTube channel, just search Talk 20s. Or if you're driving or working and you just want to listen to the audio, you can still stay here on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For full transparency, we love bringing you guys loads of free weekly content. But in order to do this, we do work with brand partners who you'll hear from in this episode, including an advertisement from Zopa Bank. We hope you enjoy this week's episode, and over to future Gabby to intro today's guest. Welcome back to the Talk 20s podcast. Today in the studio, I have the amazing Matt Hall, who is the host of the Success School podcast, and we are going to be breaking down success for you in your 20s. And it's probably not what you're going to be thinking it actually is. So this is an episode that you really need to listen to if you are in your early 20s or you are really struggling with wanting to do all of these big goals and you want to achieve all these great big things and you kind of feel like there's just no way that you're going to get there. So buckle up. This is an amazing episode and let's get on with the show. So Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hiya.
I love that.
Thanks for having me.
That's all right. We always kickstart the podcast by asking all of our guests to look back at this time last year. And I actually think it's quite apt for the episode that we're going to discuss because it's all going to be about success. So I think it's so important that sometimes we look back at maybe how far we've come.
Yeah.
What were you doing this time last year?
So I prepped for this,
you prepped.
Right? I know exactly.
You're such a good podcast guest because usually people go, "Oh my god, yeah, I forgot about that,"
Yeah.
And they sit down and they've forgotten. But you prepped on the train, so
Prepped on the train, and
well
it was
done.
actually like you said there. I think like with life in general, it's so easy to just get caught up in what's next. So
100%.
actually, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I was like a year ago today. I just finished filming Love Triangle.
Yeah.
Which is mad because that's only just come out on telly.
You finished that a year ago?
Yeah, that was a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
And I was actually in Barcelona performing at a festival to thousands of people.
Lovely.
In my fake Take That tribute band. Do you want to see the picture?
You do a bit of everything. You're going to be such an interesting story. Is that you? Zoom in on your
Yeah, but
face.
I've got like a wig on. I've got a hat on.
You're trying to look like Mark. It's Mark, isn't it? That you,
I still had the beard though. I should have shaved, to be honest.
Ah, love it.
So that was me, and this was me before. I got another picture as well, which was before because we were literally performing on the beach.
Wow.
Which was such a cool thing. So that was literally a year ago.
And what are the crowds like? Because I'm assuming take that. It's like my mum's, my auntie's kind of era. Like, do you love that?
Trying to say I'm old?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're young.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I'm sure your audience is probably like the.
It's a range. It is predominantly. You are right, of course. But I feel like the great thing about Take That is they've been around for so long and they keep reinventing themselves that then it's like the mums that loved them when they were teens have then passed it on to their kids. So and it's mad. Like the audiences are amazing, but sometimes it's a bit surreal. You actually feel a little bit like Take That, when people are screaming at you. And,
really?
Yeah.
That's good. I've never really thought about it from a tribute perspective. Like, do people still go like crazy for it then? Like,
yeah.
You have like photos of people.
Photographs.
Yeah.
We used to do the autograph thing when we first started. No one does that now, do they? But yeah, I think, but it's a compliment because what you'll usually find is Take That's biggest fans are the ones that A, if they love you, are going to be the most full on, but B, they'll be the most honest. So if you're not like Take That, they'll be like, nah, it's rubbish. But we have got people who've been to see us 20, 30 times that come back that love it. So yeah, it's cool.
Well, you mentioned there that you just finished recording Love Triangle. So it's Channel 4 show. Tell us a little bit more about that as well.
Okay.
Why that kind of... I wasn't expecting you to do that, actually. I wasn't expecting you to be like,
was you expecting to be like, I found love, it was beautiful?
Well, yeah. Tell us more.
It was an experience.
Yeah.
And at the time, I found it really, really tough because as with any new show, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Like when you see people now go on Big Brother or whatever, or Love Island, you know what to expect. There might be the odd twist or turn, but it's pretty much a set format or formula. Whereas for us, we didn't even know the title of the show because it was that new.
Wow.
So the whole concept we thought was just be quite a nice dating show. You're going to be matched with somebody that is your type on paper and then you're going to live together. And it's just a bit of a social experiment to see how would you get on. As it turned out, obviously the show was Love Triangle. There's a third person brought into the mix. And it was hard. It was really, really challenging. I found it, I think I struggled more than I thought I would because I'm somebody that's, very interested in working on mindset and self-development. I consider myself generally quite a confident-ish guy. Not so much with dating, admittedly. I do find that a bit, I do get awkward when it comes to dating. But doing that on a TV show where you've got people filming you and watching you, and then having a third guy brought into the mix and having to compete for the girl and that kind of thing, I did find it really, really tough. But it's a year on, you know, all is forgiven. It still was a great experience in many ways. You know, it has opened doors. I've made some amazing friends from doing it. It was just at the time, it was a little bit traumatic.
People who haven't watched it then, like, what actually happened to you? Spoilers here if you haven't watched the series.
Yeah, if you want to watch it, pause now, watch it and come back.
Yeah.
Done that? Right, let's continue. So basically, I got matched with a girl. Well, she was texting two guys where she doesn't see either guy. So she picks one of you based on your chat, basically.
Yeah.
So I must be all right at chatting. She picked me. We go on a date, and then the next day we move in together. And we're living together, filming together, day in, day out. So things escalated very quickly. We got on really, really well. And then halfway through, they go, boom, you're moving out and another guy's moving in, and you're not going to have contact, so you won't know anything about what's happening.
Oh my God.
Then, you know, a week or so later, they then bring me back, and then it's like, who's she going to choose, sort of thing.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
And what happened after
She didn't choose me.
No.
But then they didn't work out either, so it was just rubbish for everyone in the end.
Do you think it's a show that will do well? Like, going forward, do you think they're going to do other series of it?
They've said I think it's very, I don't think it's officially got the green light, but they've got applications for people if you're interested. Like, I think it's potentially going to do a second series. They've already had 2 series in Australia that I believe have done pretty well. So it could be something that grows and grows. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Because like the original series 1 of Love Island, it couldn't look more different really to what Love Island looks like right now. It's grown so much. So usually like, I think it's quite a tough ride to be the first cast through a new format of a show because you are the guinea pigs.
It felt like that.
Did it?
Yes.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's TV, isn't it? And I think they will learn from that. And if it does go again, they'll have to do it slightly different, because part of its quote unquote charm, I guess, is that we genuinely didn't know what was happening next.
It reminds me of when they did Too Hot to Handle. And now it's obvious when they go into Too Hot to Handle that they're on that show, because they were like, oh, you thought you were going to go on a different show. And then it's like, it's the big surprise is that, you can't kiss or touch or do anything with anyone. Like, you know what I mean?
So I think they will find ways to evolve the format. Yeah. And I'm interested to see how they do that. It'll be cool.
Us Brits are so damn polite. Like, we never run out of polite ways to say thanks when you're following someone down corridor after corridor and they're holding door after door for you. It can sometimes get hilarious. But can the awkwardness of always being polite actually affect our bank balances? Well, a recent survey from Zopa Bank showed that almost half of Brits are currently out of pocket from lending others money, with about 1 in 5 actually never even getting it back because they're too awkward to ask for it. And it's costing them on average £300 a year. Whether that's a little or a lot of money for you, if you'd ask for it back and put it in a savings account, you'd be earning interest on it. There's nothing awkward about money in the Zopa app. In fact, it offers effortless ways to manage and save your money. You can choose which saving account suits you best, access anytime or fixed, all under one roof, the Smart Savings Hub. Download the Zopa app and start saving now. So tell me about your experience of, like, I guess, following the blueprint for success, and why even starting Success School was something that you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I want to say in response to that is thank you for having me on this show, because I think this is such a needed conversation for people in their 20s. It's needed for all of us at all stages of life, but in particular, the thing that I reflect on in my 20s is how confusing it is. You know, what you're saying there about some people are saying, get a job. Other people are saying, don't get a job, travel.
Yeah.
And trying to navigate that really is so confusing. And I also think there's a lot of awful advice out there that leads people down this path of they're never going to be happy because they're chasing the wrong things. And that's the first thing that I would say that I've come to learn, you know, and I'll also say I'm still learning. And
of course,
that's the secret, everyone listening. We never have it all figured out, and that's okay. But for me, I think when we turn on TV or, you know, we go on social media, the thing that we're inundated with is people telling us what success is. You know, we've got the Lamborghinis, the Rolex watches, we've got the really attractive people in the bikinis, and they're all suggesting that you'll be happy if you look like us and if your life looks like us. And the one thing that I would say to people is to shut out the noise. Stop comparing your definition of success to anybody else's. I think that for me, I was ambitious from being a kid. I always wanted to achieve at a high level, and I bought into this whole narrative, this blueprint of success that is like, you'll be happy when you have X amount of money or X amount of fame or followers and all this stuff. And what I came to learn is that is so not true. Yeah. And what you end up doing if you're not careful is sacrificing happiness. You end up sacrificing meaningful relationships. And as I got to when I was about 27, I had a little bit of a meltdown, bit of a breakdown, because everything that I thought success was, it wasn't. And in pursuing those external wins that we think are success, you know, like the money and the big social media following, whatever, it actually led me to be the unhappiest and like really unhappy. My girlfriend and I of nearly 7 years broke up. I ended up putting on loads of weight. I ended up having a business where I didn't want a business. I was unhappy. I didn't really have any friends. I didn't have a social life. Like literally, I mean, does that sound successful? Mm-hmm. And I didn't even have loads of money. I ended up with a business that just took all my time, and any money we made, I'd reinvest. And so the point that I want to make and the message I want to get across really is be so mindful of who you listen to in terms of when they're talking about what success is. And ultimately that is why I started this Success School podcast. It was around that time when I was about 27. And I was like, oh God, everything that I thought success was, I'm now questioning. And I was like, what is the meaning of life? Like, what should I be doing?
Deep stuff, isn't it? Like,
it got deep. Yeah, real deep. So then I was like, look, we just need to sit down with people who on the outside appear to genuinely be getting it right.
Yeah.
And start to ask the question, like, what is your definition of success? Mm-hmm. And bit by bit, that's when I started to realize that success is everything that we're taught it isn't. It's the exact opposite of what we're taught.
And what do you mean when you say that? I think it's quite an interesting outlook.
So what I've come to learn now is, well, I think one piece is it is subjective. So that's the first thing, that nobody can really tell you what success is. You have to figure out for yourself what success is. Mm-hmm. For me personally, what I've gone on to learn is it's about feeling a sense of self-acceptance, peace, being at peace with yourself, being at peace with your life, with where you are. It's more, I talk about this concept of external versus internal validation. It's more about internal validation. When you genuinely can be happy with yourself, warts and all, because none of us are perfect and none of us will be. We've all got things we're like, oh yeah, that was a bit shit how I did that. I could have done that better. We've all got that, right? But if you can be at peace with that and not put happiness, success on external validation, on what everybody else is thinking or what everybody else says you should be doing, then that's when I believe you start to really get into this new realm of genuine success. And it's where you start to be more authentic. It's when you start to, you can still be ambitious, right, and be at peace, but you're chasing ambition not from a place of lack. I think most people, and I certainly was guilty of this, I was ambitious because I thought, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm useless. Yeah. And in achieving an external goal or getting an external bit of validation from someone saying, oh, well done, you look amazing, or you're doing great, I thought that would make me feel successful and good enough. But when actually you flip reverse it and you go, do you know what, I'm already good enough. I'm a human being that's doing my best. I haven't got everything figured out. I never will have. But I'm just grateful for the opportunity to live and be alive and kind of chase goals from that position. That's where I believe you can start to do things that's more aligned, more authentic, and that's where you truly become successful. So in a nutshell, it's not doing stuff for everybody else. It's learning about what do you really want in life. Mm-hmm.
I think that passage there is just so helpful to listen to. And I wish that like I had heard that in my early 20s, because I think I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you're saying, is that I as I've grown older, the more accepting I have been of myself, the more I've been able to appreciate, okay, like you have done great things and you are doing great things and you have great people around you, and you know your life is it is great, but it's because I've come to accept who I am, rather than trying to go, I feel like I should be like that person, or I feel like I should be like that person, and if I was like that person, maybe other people think I was successful and then I'd think I was successful. And it's such a confusing situation to be in, but I think so many people go through it through their 20s.
Oh, most people.
Yeah, like, and I'm, I guess, in a similar point to you now, where I'm like, okay, like I kind of finally feel like I like myself, which is a quite a big thing to say, and I like where my life is going, and you know, and that's a really tricky point for a lot of people to get to, I think, at any stage in their life, let alone in their 20s.
100%. And I think it's also being okay with not having it all figured out. And I think that's a tricky part for people as well. What I really came to learn is what we tend to do is put happiness on a destination, and we kind of think, oh, well, I'm not happy now, but I'll be happy when I earn X amount of money, or I'll be happy when I get in shape, or it's all these things that we're putting happiness off. And what I would say to people is there is an element of, do you know what? If you think it's going to bring you happiness, by all means, try it. And the reason I say that, and it might sound a little contradictory, is you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can have me tell you that, you know, having a six-pack or millions of pounds in the bank won't make you happy. But what I would say for most of us, and this is just how we are as humans, we don't believe it until we've experienced it, right? And you're probably similar. Would we have listened if someone tried to tell us when we was 19, 20, you know? So I would also just give that caveat, is it's okay to have goals. I mean, it's good to have goals and it's okay to pursue stuff, but just be mindful at what cost you are pursuing those goals. And just be aware that it probably won't be everything that you'll think, but really, if you can find joy in that pursuit, and importantly, the lessons that you learn, then it can be okay to still pursue those things. And the reason I say that is, for me, I really struggled with my body image from as long as I can remember. I was a performer that doing like acting classes and stuff like that from being about 8. And you know the score with like that kind of industry. It's very cutthroat. You are judged. You know, there is no second place. You either get the job and you get that part on TV, or you don't. And part of it is to do with your look. And I think then going into my teens and like early 20s, I was always, and I think it's an important sort of discussion to have, especially as a guy, because we hear this narrative that it's predominantly a lot of females that struggle with things like anorexia and body dysmorphia, bulimia, these kind of things. But so I'm told there is a rising number of it happening with guys as well. And, you know, I was 17 when I first had a little bit of an experience where I ended up developing bulimia, where I would eat food, junk food, and then I'd throw it all up. Because it was this thing of wanting to be slim and look good for camera and stuff like that. So I always, as long as I can remember, struggled with body image. And again, I always had this in my mind that if I could just get fit and have a six-pack and big muscles and all the rest of it, then I'll have self-acceptance. And even though I had people around me, really good guidance from people saying, look, you know, it's not everything and don't do things in extremes and all the rest of it. Eventually I got to the point where I competed in a bodybuilding show, which is about as extreme as it gets.
Yeah, for sure. What got you to that point where you were like, I'm going to compete?
I think, well, it was two major things. One is I had a bit of a coach at the time who persuaded me to do it. That in itself is its own thing, but also I still did it, right? You can't kind of be forced to do something 100% without some level of wanting to do it. And I think it is what we're talking about here, that somewhere deep down, I still didn't feel good enough. And I still feel like I needed to do it to prove to myself and to prove to others, look at me now, kind of thing, which is so rubbish to think that that was the mindset, but it was. And the best thing to come out of that is I got in the best shape of my life. And then I stood on stage, you know, in my underpants pretty much, or shorts, whatever it is they give you, to be judged, to be validated. And I also got awarded a place. I got a Brit final invite, so I got placed at the end of it. And I realised I don't feel any better. I don't feel a better human being because I'm now stood in my pants with abs and a six-pack, you know. And I personally kind of needed that. I needed to do that to go, this is nonsense. Like, this whole thing of I will be happy when is just rubbish. And from that day onwards, I've never had a six-pack again. I think I literally lost it the next day. Like, anyone knows you do stupid stuff to get in shape. They call it like stage ready, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you have a cake afterwards, you're bloated and it's gone.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say I've never had a six-pack since. But I can also say it's the first time in my life I've never needed one.
Yeah.
And I guess human beings are sort of wired this way. We need to sometimes go through it and learn the hard way, don't we, to really learn the lessons. But if I could give it to anybody and say, please don't do things in extreme, like, it isn't the answer. You don't need to do things in extreme to be happy. And that's what I learned that day.
I see guys seeking out that information so much more that like, oh, like I want a cheat code to become successful. Where's the cheat code? What's your thoughts on that?
Spoiler alert, there isn't one.
Yeah.
There is no cheat code. And I did that. I've paid for mentors. I've paid tens of thousands of pounds for coaching and, you know, business mentors, personal trainers and all that kind of stuff. There is no cheat code.
Yeah.
I heard it said recently, I think it was Stephen Bartlett, and I loved this quote. He said, the slow way is the fast way, because there is no fast way. Because anything you do that gives you a quick win isn't a sustainable win, and therefore you're going to go backwards. So actually, the quicker you can go slow, the quicker you'll get the result, if that makes sense. So I now say, if anybody's saying to you, you know, I don't know, 6 figures in 12 months or a six-pack in 6 weeks, anything that sounds too good to be true, even if you can do it, right? Even if you can do that amount of money in that short space of time, chances are you won't be able to sustain it, because real success takes time. And we talk about success in this circumstances, like achieving a goal, right? There is no quick win. And there's a quote that I think Tony Robbins said, which is, most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10. I think it was Tony. I think Warren Buffett might have said it as well. Like, just pretty smart people said it, so I'm going to own it today. It's my quote. It's not. But I thought it was such an interesting quote. And the older I've got, the more I've learnt this. And it's one of those pieces of advice I always think, again, I wish I'd have got this younger, which is stop trying to achieve all your goals this year. Like, stop. If you can just take things a little bit slower, stop thinking you need a cheat code. Learn through mistakes as well, through trying stuff and going, okay, that's not worked. How can I just pivot slightly and adapt and keep growing? And you have one solid year like that, and then you multiply that by 10, like, you could do so much in a decade. But for so many of us, we're impatient. And for so many of us, we're impatient because of what we've already talked about, which is we feel insecure. We don't feel good enough. We try to keep up with the Joneses. Oh, they look successful, and so I need to go faster so that I can be as good as them. No, it's all nonsense. It's all rubbish.
And ultimately, if you go faster, you will just burn out. Like, burnout is real. It's happened to me before. Like, we did a festival back in October last year, and we did it in like 90 days, like the whole prep from start to finish. It took me longer than 90 days to recover after that event.
Wow.
It was in terms of like, okay, I was still working, I was still here and stuff like that, but like, still here, but I was in body, I was still here. But like, I was mentally drained and exhausted from going through that process, and for a huge goal that we wanted to achieve, but because we didn't have a lot of support, we didn't have a lot of funding behind it, it meant working nearly every single hour of the day. And like that, I would never do that again. So a lot of people have been asking, when's 20s Fest 2024 happening? And I'm like, if you want me to genuinely keel over and die, guys,
it can happen.
It can happen.
We can achieve another goal.
And I'm having to look at, like, you know, that absolutely the event should exist in the world, but I cannot go through that again. Just for the sake of saying we've done it for a second year, like just being able to tick a box and be like, oh yeah, we did it 2 years in a row. No, we are looking at other more sustainable ways to achieve that goal that, I'm going to be honest, are going to take longer for us to get there. But ultimately, by the end of it, I hope that it's something that we can continue to do, because we cannot work at that pace again. It's just, you know, no matter how much I really did love it in the moment, that the exhaustion is real, and like we are not invincible. Like we are just human beings.
Yeah.
So,
and I think sustainable is the word, because I've done exactly the same. You sacrifice everything else and you go all in. And, you know, we see these narratives online about like hustle 20, you know, it's they call it hustle culture, don't they? Which is the whole no days off, sleep when you're dead, get up at 5 a.m., 18-hour days.
don't do it. Just genuinely don't,
Please
honestly.
don't. And anybody saying sacrifice your sleep, switch them off and don't listen to them. You know, if you're broke, you should sleep less. Shut up. Shut up. I'm literally going to bed. In fact, I'm going to have a nap. Like, shut up. Because there is nothing more important than your health. And one of the biggest things that will contribute to good health is good sleep. Now, as with anything we talk about, there's nuance. And there is certain times we will all have done and probably will do again where you do sleep a bit less. You do have to work a bit harder to get stuff done. But as an overall principle, the people that throw out these clickbait narratives of just sleep less and shut up, it's absolute nonsense. So I feel like I keep saying nonsense because there's a lot of it out there, but it is so true. So for me, I spoke to a great guy who I highly recommend everybody follows called Dr. Arya. He came on my show probably 2 or 3 years ago, and still to this day, it's like one of my favourite ever guests, one of my favourite conversations. And one thing that really stuck with me that he said is if you achieve a really big life goal that you want by 37 versus doing it at 32, but the journey to get there was much more wholesome, sustainable, you enjoyed it, it wasn't filled with sacrificing loving relationships and social life as much. In the grand scheme of things, what's the difference between getting there at 37 or 32? Whereas if 32, you achieve it, but you've sacrificed all of that. You've not enjoyed the journey. You've not slept enough. You're now burnt out. You're now exhausted. Maybe your health suffering. And it just really stuck. It was one of them like light bulb moments that you sometimes get from these conversations. Whereas like, it's so right. In the grand scheme, like hopefully we're all going to live till 100, right?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of it, whatever that goal is, if it takes you a few more years to achieve it, but you enjoy the journey and you look after your health and your relationships, that is so much better. So that's one thing I try and live by now.
That's so true. I think a lot of us also, because we're bombarded with all different types of information all the time, constantly, we've grown up in this world, most of us, struggle with, I call it shiny magpie syndrome, you call it shiny penny syndrome. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I think you hear this again a lot on podcasts like this, that, you know, there has never been a better time to start your own business. There has never been a better time to be successful. You live in a world where you should be so grateful. You've got the internet, at the tip of your fingertips. You have got access to everything, all the information that 30, 40 years ago you wouldn't have had access to. And of course, that is absolutely true. What an incredible time to live in. The other side of it is you're so inundated. Every time you flip your phone open, you don't have flip phones anymore, do you? I sound really old. But every time you turn your phone on and you go on a social media channel, you're just inundated with, you should be doing this, whether it be cryptocurrency, starting a side hustle. Like, you're just constantly told all these things that will be the thing to make you successful. And what that does is just create complete overwhelm for people. It makes them start a bit of something, not like it, but try something else. And then someone else comes over going, do this. And what we've got now is a lot of people just really, really busy, stressed out, overwhelmed, and not really getting anywhere. So the thing that I've been the same as well, and I've had to reflect on that. And the thing that I say now is, again, try and drown out that noise a little bit and just figure out, like, what do I naturally enjoy doing? Like, what do I want out of my life? Not everybody needs to be a millionaire, and that's okay. So what would make you happy? And what do you think you could be good at? What do you think would be valuable? And, you'd feel a sense of pride in doing? And my advice is take a considerable amount of time to get really bloody good at it. Like, really put in the hours that, investing in something that A, you enjoy, B, you feel a sense of growth and pride and achievement, and C, is valuable and useful. And again, that takes a level of self-awareness to not be constantly, not allow yourself to take on board what everybody else's opinion is. And that's a lot of the work that I've done on myself over the years is to learn more about myself. What do I actually want? What's going to, make me happy? And it's a skill. It doesn't come natural for a lot of us. But I think it's the key to true success and happiness. Find something and again, remove this need to get overnight success that we're all sold. It's going to probably take... One thing I have learned is whatever goal you have, 9 times out of 10, however long you think it's going to take to achieve it, probably going to take about 6 times longer. Like generally, across the board.
Is that what the stats are? Yeah.
No, sorry, I don't know if that's a stat. That's just... But in my experience, what I've found is usually, and maybe that's just because I'm one of these that's like optimistic and always expects things to be easier than they are. So maybe that's my thing. But usually things take a lot longer than we think they're going to take.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So again, my point here is just take your time with stuff. And rather than going from one thing to the next and going, that hasn't worked, I've tried that for 3 months, I've tried that, just pick one thing and give yourself long enough to actually get decent at it to then know if it's working or not. And then again, if it isn't working, that's okay to quit and try something else. But I do think there's an issue with people not sticking things out long enough because we're being inundated all the time saying, you don't want to do that, you should be doing this. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for stick stuff out a bit longer.
Do you think then we have a problem as I guess a generation of like not being able to commit to things? Because I think that's true of relationships.
Yep.
I think that's true of jobs and careers. A lot of us are going, oh, this isn't right, I'm going to change and stuff like that. Whereas previous generations would have maybe probably stuck it out a little bit longer. Like, yeah.
I think it's really sad. And there's a little bit of a contradiction and a juxtaposition as well, in that you've got some people that stay in relationships and stay in jobs for years that they should just leave. Like, it's done. You don't enjoy that job. You don't love your wife. Why are you still there? So there is still very much that. And this, again, is where life gets so complicated and confusing for everybody. And again, I want to say, like, spoiler alert, and another spoiler, that's not just in your 20s. Like,
it's forever.
Everybody's always trying to figure out. And as you grow, you value different things and you want different things from your life. So it is ever evolving and changing. But yeah, to your point, I do think we've got an attention span issue. I think we've got, I'm talking societally, I think we've got a commitment issue, and I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good for people's mental health. I don't think it's good for people's genuine feeling of pride and fulfillment in life. And it's obviously not good for relationships.
I also think that we think, especially, and I think we're fed this by, it's not our fault, but like we're fed this by like movies and series and stuff like that like everything should just feel really easy. And like everything should, it shouldn't be impossible. It shouldn't feel really difficult to do. But at the same time, to achieve anything, you sometimes have to just grit your teeth and kind of be like, get your head down and kind of crack on. And sometimes a lot of people can, I mean, I'm guilty of this. I've done that in previous jobs and stuff like that. And I've gone, oh, this is just too hard. I'm just going to give up and do something else. And that I think that is, because you're then being bombarded with other things where I could be doing this and then I wouldn't be feeling this way. And I think we're just kind of, it's really difficult, and there probably isn't a right answer to this, but maybe just being aware that you're thinking like that. Because if I'd have gone, oh, maybe I'm thinking like this because, I believe that things should feel easy when actually we have to do hard stuff all the time.
Life is hard. I think it is an ongoing confusing thing, and I think the solution to it is about awareness. And a lot of what I talk about on my show is about developing that skill set of self-awareness, and you can do that through exercises and asking different questions and better questions. I think when it comes to the question of should I keep going and persevere with this when I'm not enjoying it, or should I quit, I think the questions to ask is, does the potential reward warrant it? Like, if I did achieve this, is it worth the short-term quote-unquote pain or unhappiness or discomfort that I'm experiencing now? And I think that's a really good question to ask, because sometimes you go, do you know what? Even if I did it, I think in business people go for that 10 grand a month, or 6 figures or whatever. Actually, would it change your life that much? If right now you're doing 3 grand, like, actually, if you just got to 5 grand, would that be cool? And the level of sacrifice to get to 10, is it really worth it? So people can then go, actually, no, it's not even worth it. And then you go, well, quit. Or the answer might be, actually, that would be incredible. It's worth the pain. It's worth the sacrifice. let's keep on going. So I think it's about asking good questions.
So if you put it back to you, we use the bodybuilding analogy. If you'd have sat down to yourself and asked that exact question to yourself, what do you think you would have said?
At the time, I would have said, it's worth it.
Okay.
And even now, for me personally, to some degree, it was worth it purely because of the amount of incredible lessons I've learned. This is just my experience and my opinion, but I think bodybuilding is toxic. I think bodybuilders, every bodybuilder I've ever met, when I speak to them, it's very clear they do that because they're insecure and they need to feel good about themselves by injecting steroids, under-eating, overtraining, and then standing half naked on stage covered in baby oil and fake tan. Like, in my opinion, people doing that are doing it because they need to stop going to the gym so much and go to therapy instead. That's what I think personally. Now, I wouldn't have known that or come to that conclusion had I have not gone through it. And so for me, doing that one competition was enough for me to learn about myself to go, wow, that is mad. Like, why was I putting that on a pedestal? So, yeah, I think in response to it, it was worth it because of how much I learned from persevering. But then what I didn't do, which so many do, is go, well, I've done it once now. I need to do it again and go even better. And I need to win the next show. I went, I'm quitting. I've learnt my lessons. I've got what I need from this. Move on.
But at the time, I'm guessing when you kind of were faced with that hard challenge, you probably thought that the wins on the outside would be, I have a six pack. Everyone's going to think I look amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I also
it was
thought
completely the opposite.
Yeah. And I also thought it'll be sustainable. I'll have a six pack forever. No.
Yeah.
Like, you eat normally for one day after and immediately you don't look like that. Or I didn't anyway.
If you're watching the Talk 20s podcast on YouTube, you'll always see that we have these drinks out on the table. They're Riviera iced tea. And I was honestly so excited when they reached out to sponsor the podcast because I am obsessed, like seriously obsessed with iced tea. If I'm getting a meal deal, I'm getting an iced tea. If I'm on holiday and I don't fancy something alcoholic, I'm ordering an iced tea. And now here in the studio, we have iced tea on tap always, and our guests love it. Riviera iced tea is also low calorie, natural, vegan, and gluten-free. What a bonus. And the peach iced tea from them is genuinely the best I've ever tasted. You can only get these drinks online right now. So run, don't walk, over to rivieraicedtea.com and fill your fridge with something super refreshing this summer. I also think the reality of success for a lot of people is that maybe you see someone and it's, I don't know, a millionaire or a movie star or an influencer or a CEO or whatever your idea of like, oh, I really would like their life. I would really like to live their life. Honestly, I bet you for 99% of the time, if there was some kind of Freaky Friday that went on and you were actually put into their body, you would probably hate their life. You would probably hate to actually be them.
Yeah.
Because the actual reality of success isn't probably all sunshine and roses as to what you probably think it is.
Yeah, I kind of think when we talk about external success, like financial success and things like that and business success, usually more success equates to more pressure, more stress, more judgment, more expectations. That's the reality, right? But people don't see that. Now, some people thrive in that environment and they love that. You know, your Elon Musks of the world must just love that. They have to. That's in their DNA. I think a lot of people are familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk's content and he's just a born entrepreneur. Like, he loves problem solving. Most of us don't love dealing with problems every day. So there's a dissonance between where we are, where they are, and then this bit in between. And this bit in between is ultimately, you might not be the sort of person, it's not in your DNA and your personality type to live that life. But you see the externals, which is they've got the nice house, the nice car, popularity, whatever, influence. So again, this is like a self-awareness thing of going, actually, maybe that is not right for me. And the thing that we spoke about the other day as well is when you hear a lot of these people saying, you know, you can be as successful as me and sleep less and this, that, and the other. They're usually talking about one thing, and that'll be business success, financial success. And I think what I said to you yesterday was like, what a better podcast would be get their wife on the show or their partner, get their children on the show, get their best friends on the show. Like, ask them, do they think that person's successful? And I am willing to bet 9 times out of 10, most will go, don't get me wrong, they're amazing at what they do, they're great at business, like I couldn't do that, but oh my God, like all they ever do is business, they're never here, they're never present, they get really, they're always in a bad mood, or whatever. So again, I think a really important part of this conversation is being mindful of what is the metric of success that you judge it by. If it's to be financially successful, but an arsehole, like, fine. If that makes you happy, go and be an arsehole that's got loads of money. But if actually there's more to it that you want, we need to maybe stop putting those people on a pedestal so much.
And I think it's really important. Like, I think success to me is also what the people around you think about you as well. Like, if you are a good person, if you are caring, that speaks so much more volumes than whatever, oh, she's making X, Y, Z, or she's just done this show, whatever. Like, I think that is so much more important of what the people around you think about you.
100%. And also what's interesting is, I think I have followed that blueprint of success where I've thought these things are going to make me feel a certain way or make people around me feel they're different around me. The people who really care about you and that matter, they're not really going to change. No. So it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have, or whether you're in shape or not in shape, or whatever it is you're chasing. The people that actually matter in your life, the people that will be there on your deathbed, or the people that you care about, they don't really care about that. They just care, are you a good person? Is your relationship now meaningful, and are you happy? And I think there's a lot to be said for being more mindful of what you're saying there, of people who know me most, what do they really think about me right now? Am I chasing these external goals and in doing so just being a bit of a prick? If so, maybe reassess.
Some amazing advice there, and I think you pretty much embody everything that we're about at the Talk 20s. So it's been so easy to chat to you. But we have some questions that we ask at the end of the podcast, which we hope, because some people don't, they just aren't honest about their biggest adulting failures. I think you've obviously talked about one there with, I guess, with the bodybuilding thing, I wouldn't necessarily describe as a failure, but you kind of got to the end of it and you're like, this is not what I thought. Yeah. Are there any other moments in your life that you kind of think like, obviously we all learn from our mistakes, but you made a big cock up and you were like, actually, like, I really shouldn't have done that, but maybe it taught you a great big lesson. Is there something that springs to mind?
The thing for me would be my previous relationships. I'm talking about like girlfriends. I think that I got so caught up in this whole ambition thing that we've spoke about today that I took previous partners for granted massively. And that for me is still something that I want to work on. And I'll only really know, because you can talk about this and you can have the best intentions and know that you need to work on it, but I'll only really know if I have grown when I'm in a relationship again. But that, I think, that it's interesting because the stuff we've spoken about today, and as I guess you get with all your guests, they're sharing their experience, their stories. So a lot of the quote unquote wisdom that I'm trying to give people today is ultimately through the stuff I've got wrong. And as I reflect, the biggest thing that I would say I've kind of failed on is putting career first and external things first and not that important relationship. And I do think when all is said and done, we're just here for a short amount of time. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things that much, whether you achieve these goals you set for yourself or not. But what will matter is who have you got around you and how precious are those relationships and how much are you nurturing those. I actually spoke to a relationship expert recently, and she works with a lot of like high level CEOs, business owners and things like that. And she was like, the best business hack on the planet is work harder on your intimate relationship. Because she was like, and she said like for men in particular, when your home life and your wife's not happy or whatever it may be, like all your business fails anyway. And she says you see that with some of the biggest people. I think she said like Elon Musk, when he went through a divorce, his businesses didn't do as well. And it's like what I fell into the trap of, and I think one of my failures that I reflect on is I put so much emphasis on building the business and babe, I can't come home tonight, sorry, because I've got the business. And then the minute that you go through that breakup, it's one of the hardest things ever. And you feel so much regret, like, why did I not listen more? Why was I not present more? And actually, I don't care about the business. I just want you, and I want to work on this. Well, if you reverse that and be more present, not only will that relationship blossom and grow, but by default, your business will do better. So I thought that was good advice.
No, that's great advice. And I second that absolutely. I think one of the things that me and my fiance have done this year is we've started to learn to ballroom dance together.
Nice.
Now, he was not keen on this at all.
I was going to say, whose idea was it?
It
So
was 100%
yours.
my idea.
Yeah,
I grew up like going to ballet tap jazz and stuff like that. And like, I've always wanted to learn how to ballroom dance. And I've always thought, oh, wouldn't it be so good if, the guy that I end up with that can ballroom dance. And I've been with Dan a long time now. And I just thought that's never going to be the case.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought he's never going to want to do that. But I managed to convince him to go because we're getting married. And I was like, I do not want our first dance to be like, I just could imagine it already, like so you just stood in the middle and you just looked dead awkward. And I just thought I just don't want it to be that. So I was like, look, and I was like, I said it for like, we got engaged a couple of years ago. For a good year I was like, I'd really like to go to ballroom dancing lessons, and then I mentioned it at dinner with his parents, and his dad, also not the type I would thought who would want to go, was like, you know what, I've really wanted to learn how to ballroom dance, let's go to a couples class together. And that was enough to kind of rope Dan along to go to these ballroom dancing lessons. But we have genuinely fallen in love with ballroom dancing. So we've been doing I think we've probably done it for maybe 4 months now. And it's a Monday night. And like, there's been events that have come up that have been on that Monday night. And I've gone, and they're big things. And I'm like, I would usually want to put business first. But like, I've got to go to this because it's networking and this and this. And I've actually sat down and I've gone, that is one of the most important times of my week to spend time with him, because we go and we absolutely like, we're not the best. Like, obviously we're not, but we're just absolutely wet ourselves. We come away from it just like just laughing about stuff. And I just think it's such a valuable hack that we have that in the diary. And that we're always going, no, we're going to, and we've not missed a week it's been on. We've not missed a week. Like, we've absolutely loved it. So find your ballroom dancing, like if you're with a partner right now, find your thing that that is like a commitment to them, that that you're always, because it's, we're both still very like business orientated, but we have that time where we go, I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about right now is learning how to cha-cha with you. And it's a left foot, not a right foot.
That's you telling him, right? Because you got it right, obviously. I love that. And I think it ties into that thing of, look, I think firstly that idea that you can still achieve your business goals. It might take longer. Maybe you'd have met someone at that networking event and they might have fast tracked it. But,
cool. I don't care. I'd rather have gone to dancing. Like,
and I also think the second thing is that it's about being more intentional when you are working, because you're like, I know I've got to be at that ballroom tonight, like that class. So let's be super focused now. And it's about getting more out of your time as well.
I do think that they're like, I don't have kids, but like I hear when people do have kids that obviously you have to, as a little child, you have to then prioritize them. So the business, a lot of people become really effective in business when they then have kids, because they go, well, I've got to do X, Y, Z, and then I've got to go and pick up my kid from school, and that can't flex, that can't change. Like, whereas I think when kids maybe aren't involved in a relationship, we do probably take them for granted more.
It's that thing of people say when they have kids, it's like a love like you've never experienced, and but it's like that should be the same with your partner, right? And I think that's such a lovely way of putting it, is like, you can't be late for your children, so why do you think it's acceptable to be late for your partner, or say, sorry, I need to cancel a business? I think that's a really, really nice way of thinking about it, and it's something I shall take on board for my next relationship. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get everyone ballroom dancing. So the other thing we obviously like to talk about, and I think you've kind of again spoken about it a little bit already, but no one's perfect. Everybody is working through something behind the scenes that we know nothing about, regardless of what successes you see on social media. Everyone has something right now that they maybe feel insecure about, that they know that they want to try and get better at, or need to do something about in their life that they're trying to address. For you, what is that thing at this moment in time, if you don't mind sharing?
God, that's a big question. I think the biggest thing that comes up front of mind is still just learning to love myself a bit more, really. I think it's undoubtable that I have come such a long way and I'm so much nicer to myself than I ever have been. But I think we generally do as humans. We beat ourselves up. We're our own worst enemy and our harshest critic. And I still am. And that is one of the biggest things that I am actively working on. And I think that when you are a bit kinder to yourself, you are only then better to those around you as well. Because I know I can be and I have been sort of person that I'm just so focused on, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, it's not good enough, or I need to be better, that then I can take that out on people around me. And I'm nowhere near like the person I was 5-6 years ago. But it's still an ongoing thing that I'm focused on improving.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to hear that, like, obviously even someone who sits down with some of the crazy successful quote unquote people, that you still feel like there is so much to learn. Like, we're all just, getting better each day, floating around on this little rock in space.
This little rock, yeah.
This little rock in space.
And I also think, like, and I've said this before to people, like, if somebody looks like they've got the perfect life, generally speaking, probably be wary of that. Because the point that you're making there, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matt. It has been amazing to kind of speak to you here and for you to share all your wisdom that you've collated and soaked up like a sponge from all of the different people that you've met and spoken to on your podcast. And hopefully this will feel like a big sigh of relief, I hope, for someone listening to an episode in their 20s of this right now, is to go, I don't actually have to be chasing this great big thing. And I actually, to give yourself some grace, I think.
Please.
Because, you are perfect just the way you are, and the goals that you want to achieve will happen eventually. And we don't need to sacrifice all these different things in order to achieve them. So, thank you for that. And I appreciate, how honest and candid you've been. But we always end the podcast by asking all of our guests just one simple question. And can't get my words out today. If you could go back and just look at 20-year-old Matt in the eye, think about him right now, like picture him, what would you want to say to him? Just one piece of advice that would hopefully carry him through his 20s that you'd want him to really take on board.
Please enjoy it more. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, that there's some weird thing that happened to me when I turned 30, which is just generally started to feel more at ease, more self-assured, more confident, more comfortable in my own skin. My finances are better now. It's like a lot of the foundations have been laid, and just generally I just feel better about who I am. But the one thing that I've just turned 33 this week, and the one thing that I can never be is 20. And if I could just have said to myself, don't worry, you will build confidence. You will, things will work out, and they'll never be perfect, but things get better. But right now, being 20 years old or 22 years old or however old you are at that moment, you'll never get this again. And I think for everybody, and even advice for myself today, if we can learn to appreciate what we have now, there's always going to be things we wish were better at any given moment in our life. But if we can recognize the good in what we have now and take a bit of pressure off ourselves on what isn't great, I just think we're going to have much better lives, happier people. So, I would just say, look, Matt, you're 20. Like, enjoy being 20.
This has been honestly one of my favorite episodes today. I just think it's one of those things that I really needed to listen to when I was younger, and hopefully will prove so comforting to so many 20-somethings. So thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Like, this is something that we want to spread. We want loads of young people to hear this message, that success actually looks so different to everyone, and probably what you think about success is completely wrong, and it's probably making you really sick and overwhelmed and a lot of those things. So please do share this around with your friendship groups, and leave a comment below if you've enjoyed this episode as well. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Talk 20s podcast. Thanks for listening, guys.